and welcome back to another episode of Loud and Opinionated. I'm just surprised as you are that I'm doing 2 uploads this week. It's crazy. We usually never do this. Well, it's part of changes. Get this out of the way. Right out of the gate, got some housekeeping. There's been a change to this show. One of them I'm in the process of doing right now, uploading twice a week, but I will get to that first. I want to mention that Derek has left the show, I guess. He's no longer having hosting duties on Loud and Opinionated. He's not leaving the site. He is still a co-creator, co-founder of loudandopinionated.com and what this is, so I'm never going to ask him not to be a part of it. So he still is, as I mentioned in the last episode. He is going to be in a more administrative role. He's going to be in charge of managing the website, pretty much all the graphic design, making everything look professional, extending the brand. If only you could see the spreadsheets that he has created about making this a better show and extending the brand. That is what he is going to be doing. Now, my duties are strictly going to be what you see here. I'm going to be talking to you guys, doing the podcast, and making an ass of myself. I'm also in the process of producing another show for Loud Opinionated, or the Loud Universe, as Derek texted me today. That's what he was calling it. So I'm developing more shows, more content. I'm in charge of content and social media. So most of the time, if you see social media posts, it's me. I'm sorry to let you in on the secret, but it's usually me. Derek will be on the show when he can be. He's still going to be a part of this. I'm currently in the process of working on ideas to get other people on the show and have guests, so it always isn't just going to be me, but we'll see where that goes, and I'm pretty excited about it. And I promise this episode will not be about Red Dead Redemption 2. I know I put a lot of Red Dead Redemption 2 content on the website, and I did a whole podcast about it. I promise you that is not going to be the case this week. I have other important things to talk about. And if you're listening to this on loudandopinionated.com, thank you so much, because I'm very, very proud of that website. And again, I said Derek is the guy who's solely in charge of making that look professional. Go check out loudandopinionated.com. If you're already here, just go back and check it out, because it's awesome. He's put a lot of time and effort into it. It looks great, and I'm very proud of it. While you're there, not only do you have the awesome episodes that we have every week, there's also, we always put a lot of content. Sorry if you can hear my mouse clicking. Not only does it have this show and, some of the Audible episodes, but we also have a ton of good articles, not just by me, but Derek has written some articles. We have some other contributors. Paul Rubidoux and John Sparks have contributed to the site. Awesome articles. And you can do that. Stuttering my way through this. You can be a part of this as well if you send us a link. God dang, that's not what I want. I'm messing it up. If you want to be a part of that, it's very simple. We prefer blog posts, so it can be 300 to 1,000 words. Just send that to us. And if it's longer, that's fine. We can make it longer. We can figure that out. But we prefer those links. But again, it's not an issue. Whatever opinion you have, left, right, conservative, liberal, hot takes, we don't care. We will put it up on the site. Give you credit for it. Let people know that you contributed to help building this brand, because not only has this been a brand about sharing how we feel about things, but it was also to give to the audience and have them share their opinions, because it's about you guys as much as it is about us. So yes, be loud at loudandopinionated.com. That's where you send those to, and we'll put it up on the site. All you have to do is write it. We will take care of images and crediting people and all those things. Well, we prefer you do that, but we can do that. And stay tuned, because because December is right around the corner, so that means there's going to be the unnecessary best of articles coming to the site. I've completed one of them, working on another one. It's an ongoing process because, the year isn't quite over yet. But I'm still working on that. And yeah, loudopinionated.com. So, I kind of mentioned it earlier. I almost forgot. This show is going to change format in a little bit, a big way. This is going to change a couple things. One, the show is just going to be me, so there's going to be mostly just two topics that I'm going to talk about, and that I want to try to get this show up twice a week, maybe three if we're lucky. But at the current stance, I'm going to try and get this up twice a week, usually Monday, Wednesday, or Wednesday, Friday. It's definitely going to be Wednesday is going to be one of the days, and then either side of the week we will have an upload. If I'm feeling really frisky, I could have 3 up there if it's a really big week. But at least twice a week, 2 topics per show, whatever I want to complain about or whatever I want to praise. In that case, it was Red Dead 2 last week. So anyway, let's get on with the show. First topic of the show. Most of you know this already. This is going up on Wednesday, so everybody knows at this point. But I just kind of want to share my thoughts. Stan Lee has passed away at 95. And if you don't know who Stan Lee is, like Mike Francesca, man, that was an interesting clip. If you don't know who he is, he was pretty much the biggest voice in Marvel Comics and is the reason for majority of all the Marvel movies that you love, all the characters you love. That's because of Stan Lee. That's his biggest legacy, I think, is the fact that he created so many characters that resonated with so many people, and he's such a huge pivotal role to everybody's childhood. And it's crazy to think a guy, well, like one man, well, obviously it wasn't one man, he had artists, he had contributors, they were a big part of his success, but how a guy like him could really affect people and touch people across generations. It's not just me. It's not just people that were there for is it the Golden Age? I think it's the Golden Age. Maybe it's the Silver Age. Silver Age. It wasn't just people that were there the Silver Age when he was active. Obviously somebody like me, he wasn't an active writer at the time. He was more of the guy that we know him now. But he was always somebody that fascinated me because he was always somebody that was this big cheerleader for Marvel and was truly proud of whatever he created and was very proud of his work and always a very positive light in the world. And he's somebody that I think a lot of people look up to just for that. And there was a great quote that I saw Monday when it happened, talking about how he made a statement about how he was self-conscious about the fact that all he was doing with his life were writing comic books. And, on the surface, some people might feel that way. I mean, it's a different time now than probably when he was quoted about this. But, you think about what's going on when you see people being architects, or I'm not going to actually do a direct quote because I can't remember it, but he was talking about how people would build buildings or be doctors and save people's lives, and how he didn't at first see any value in being a comic book writer and providing entertainment. And then he ends the quote with saying that entertainment is very important to people's lives because you could be stopping someone from going over the edge and you could help someone. And that is what really resonated with me. And I wish I had known the quote before he had passed, but that was something that really resonated with me because that's why I'm doing this. That's why I like to write for the website or do videos or do podcasts, because I love to entertain people. And I've always said the whole purpose of me doing any sort of podcasting or the time that I've been on radio or any of this stuff, it's because I want to entertain people. And my motivation for that is there are a ton of things in your life that can really affect you and make you have a bad time. There's so many things that try to bring you down, and my whole thing was whether it's a podcast or a video, if just for 10 minutes, if I can make you forget about all the bad things in your life, I've done my job. That's always been my goal. Is I want to help people in the best way I know can. I know that I can, and ever since a kid, I always saw myself as a storyteller or an entertainer, and that's what my value to society is. And somebody like Stan Lee knew that, and I think really was rah cheerleader about that and let people know that, hey, being a comic book writer isn't a bad thing. Being a podcaster isn't a bad thing. Being just a writer in general is never a bad thing. Just having that imagination and being a dreamer has its value in society. Art has its value in society. And I think we need to think of it more that way. And we absolutely need doctors. We absolutely need these people. But we need entertainers, and we need people that are very passionate about art and what they create and bring to them. So, yeah, loudandopinionated.com. I want to talk about my first exposure to Stan the Man. This is going to sound funny, and you know what? I'll say it. I know that people share this experience that I do. My first ever exposure to Stan Lee was playing the Neversoft Activision Spider-Man game that came out on PlayStation 1. It was also on a 64. But PlayStation 1 Activision Neversoft Spider-Man was the first time I'd ever heard Stan Lee's voice, because he narrates the whole entire game. And if anybody's played that game, it is just so much fun. Before Insomniac Spider-Man game, it was my favorite Spider-Man game. And he narrates the whole thing, and it's just, that's, I think, the beauty of what Stan Lee was, is there's just a magnetism to his enthusiasm. He has so much love and affection for his creations, especially Spider-Man, because that's his most popular creation. That's why I'm wearing my Spider-Man shirt, if you can't see it. Well, it's more of a Venom shirt, but whatever. I couldn't find a Marvel shirt that I had that I was going to wear for this. That's not the point. He had so much enthusiasm and cared so much about this character, and so when I'm playing throughout this game and I hear his narration, I'm always happy about it. It's always putting a smile on my face. I'm having a great time thinking about it now, because there's so many memories that go through that game and how much I played it, and he was a huge factor of it. So that was my first exposure to him. And then going back, I totally forgot about this, but he was definitely in the 90s Spider-Man cartoon, which is what made me a huge Spider-Man fan, was the 1990s animated cartoon. And if anybody does not like Spider-Man the animated series, like that is a millennial that grew up in the 90s, you're not my friend. It's as simple as that. How can you not love that show? No, I'm just kidding, you're fine. Now, if it were Batman the animated series, if you didn't like that, then definitely, I don't need you in my life. I kind of already touched on that, but Stan Lee was one of a kind, and I don't think there could be anybody else like him, and the news was shocking, because I honestly thought he would live forever. I'm not that beat up about it, honestly. I mean, it sucks. I'm going to miss that character, but I mean, the dude was 95. He lived a hell of a life. He lived a better life than I'll probably live. I mean, that depends on how you value life, but this was a guy who was in the public eye for decades, and he lived a great life, and it's not tragic that he was 95. It's tragic in the way that we could never think we know as human beings that we're going to die, but we love the idea that people that we see on TV and movies, they can't die. It's not possible. But I just want to touch on that, where I'm going to miss seeing his cameos, and I'm going to miss him being a part of Marvel. But at the same time, he was 95, and that's really old. And I think he's going to be, I think his family is okay with it and are at peace with it, because he had lived a great life. My favorite cameos of Stan Lee in the Marvel movies, that's the real question. Because he's been in even the really bad ones of the early aughts. He's been with everything since the first X-Men movie up until Avengers 4. I read somewhere that I think it was, I want to say in 2016 that he had filmed like his next 8 cameos. So we're still going to be seeing him in Marvel movies for a few more years, which makes my heart happy because even they were like, all right, he's getting up in there in age. We got to get these in here. But I love how immediately, I think it was Joe, one of the Russo brothers immediately came out and said, yes, the cameo for him is in Avengers 4. The cameo's there. Don't worry about it. Which I wish I could remember what his cameo is in Infinity War. And that's going to bother me. I'll probably put the clip in somewhere. Yeah, he my favorite cameo, I think, number one would probably be The Amazing Spider-Man. Just because that is such a funny sequence and such a different way to do it. Like, the fact that they got him to do it without a speaking part makes me laugh. Because there are a few peppered out throughout the pantheon of his cameos. But most of them, he has at least one line. But the fact that the Lizard and Spider-Man are having this big epic fight in the background, and he's just got these noise-canceling headphones, listening to classical music, while all this crazy stuff is going down in the background, and he's just going about his business. I think he's the janitor in that scene. But I would say that's my favorite Stan Lee cameo. A close second, probably a tie, because I do love the Guardians. Oh, man. Guardians 2 reference where he's the Watcher. Genius idea that Stan Lee is the Watcher in the MCU. That's just brilliant writing. But and I lost my train of thought with that. The other one, the close second, and spoiler if you haven't seen Ant-Man and the Wasp yet, but there's a sequence in Ant-Man and the Wasp where he's going up to his car to unlock the door, and I think it's one of the discs like randomly hits off and shrinks the car. And his line is, I had a lot of fun in the 60s, but I'm paying for it now. To me, one of the funniest things he could have said. Because I feel like he seems like a dude that probably partied in those days. And that was probably a real possibility that dude took some acid. And probably my favorite cameo. I mean, it's close. It's The Amazing Spider-Man and it's Ant-Man and the Wasp. It's kind of the wrestling for the top position. And finally, I want to talk about my favorite Stan Lee creation. This one would be right out of the gate. People are going to say that's easily Spider-Man, as much as I talked about on my personal channel, as much as I've talked about Insomniac Spider-Man game, as much as I love, the animated show, how much this is contested a lot nowadays on the internet because we've had a really good Spider-Man movie since, but I loved the Raimi movies, well, the first two anyway. Spider-Man Homecoming. So Spider-Man, as I've always said, if Batman didn't exist, Spider-Man would be my favorite superhero. So that's easily what I could go with Stan Lee. But there's so many other ones. I absolutely loved Daredevil because that was a concept that's so out there and so different, where it's like, I'm going to take, which kind of controversial too, I'm going to take a superhero that has probably the biggest flaw you can have to be a superhero, not a flaw, disability, sorry. That he's blind, and he's gonna fight crime without sight. And I've always loved Daredevil. He's always been one of my favorites. Now, granted, Stan Lee's version wasn't as depressing as Frank Miller's stuff, or as it gets later in the history of Daredevil. But Daredevil's an awesome creation. Fantastic Four I never really connected with, or the Incredible Hulk. I get the appeal of both, but those never connected with me. Those weren't things I cared about. I never really read the X-Men, and I like the concept of the X-Men. It's just the problem with the X-Men is and this isn't Stan Lee's fault, but it gets so complicated with the X-Men. But I love the concept of that. And, you know, they've said in interviews that it wasn't designed as a commentary on racism, which I have a quote later. I don't believe that. I think absolutely this was Stan Lee's way of dealing with social issues, because he was just a comic book writer, and he knew it. He took what he knew and he applied that to the injustices he thought were happening in the world. And I think he can say whatever he wants about how it isn't that, but I definitely feel like that's exactly what it was. And to answer my question of like what was my favorite creation, it's obviously Spider-Man, but there's so many other options. But yeah, it's got to be Spider-Man. It's his best creation, and that's the beauty of Stan Lee. You know, people talked about that the last few days about how important of a creator he was, because he did make characters that had legitimate problems, that were real people, and felt like you actually could meet Peter Parker. Like, you feel like you could see that person in Queens. And the fact that he made a teenager a superhero was not thought of at the time, and having a kid in high school dealing with all the awkwardness of high school and being a superhero was something totally new at the time. And like I mentioned with Daredevil, a blind superhero, or the X-Men dealing with prejudice and segregation, and all these things are not usually something you would get out of comic books, and he brought that to the forefront and is the biggest one. You know, you could say he's one of, but he is definitely the biggest voice. And you don't have Alan Moore, Grant Morrison, Frank Miller. You don't have these legendary comic book writers without Stan Lee. And I cannot state that enough, that he is the single most important person in comics. Yes, he had collaborators. Yes, he worked with people. That's obvious. But he's an icon. And his everlasting imprint on not only comic books but pop culture will be forever missed. And, you know, that's all I'm going to say about it. I want to end this segment of Stan Lee with one single quote that a lot of people are bringing up, that was written in '68, because back in when he was an editor for Marvel, he had his own thing called Stan's Soapbox, and it's just like one little column of whatever he wanted to riff about. And this is the one from 1968. I'm sure you've seen this somewhere, but I'm going to read this to you and just make you understand how this is just who Stan Lee was as a person. And I can't do a Stan Lee voice. I was going to think about it, but I just can't do it. Let's lay it on... Let me get in a good voice. Let's lay it right on the line. Bigotry and racism are among the deadliest social ills plaguing the world today. But unlike a team of costumed supervillains, they can't be halted with a punch in the, I want to say snout, but it says snoot, or a zap from a ray gun. The only way to destroy them is to expose them, to reveal them for the insidious evils they really are. The bigot is an unreasoning hater, one who hates blindly, fanatically, indiscriminately. If his hang-up is black men, he hates all black men. If a redhead once offended him, he hates all redheads. If some foreigner beat him to a job, he's down on all foreigners. He hates people he's never seen, people he's never known, with equal intensity and equal venom. Now, we're not trying to say it's unreasonable for one human being to bug another. Oh, that just seemed weird. Let me try it again. I'm butchering this. I'm sorry, Stan, wherever you are. Now, we're not trying to say it's unreasonable for one human being to bug another. But although anyone has the right to dislike another individual, it's totally irrational, patently insane to condemn an entire race, to despise an entire nation, to vilify an entire religion. Sooner or later, that sounded weird. Sooner or later, we must learn to judge each other on our own merits. Sooner or later, if man is ever to be worthy of his destiny, we must fill our hearts with tolerance. For then, and only then, will goodness. Let me try that again. I should not have read this aloud. For then, and only then, will we be truly worthy of the concept that man was created in an image of God. A God who calls us all his children. R.I.P. Rest in peace, Stan Lee. Thank you so much for what you've created, and thank you for everything. So now we move on to a part where I'm going to get a little heated with myself. I'm going to get very angry because I got to talk about this, and it's Disney Plus. What is Disney Plus? Well, Disney just announced. I'm going to adjust some stuff here. Disney finally announced what they're going to be calling their streaming service, and this is something that they've announced. I want to say last year. Yeah, it was last summer. I remember doing a similar podcast where I kind of ranted about this. But yes, they announced that they're going to have their own streaming services with all their movies, and they're going to create original series and the whole usual shebang that everybody does now. They finally named it Disney Plus, which is no surprise because they own ESPN, and ESPN has a streaming platform, ESPN Plus. So it doesn't surprise me there. But it's finally pushed me to an edge. And I know that sounds... I'm going to get it out of the way here. I know I sound like a hypocrite because I did write an article about DC Universe when we first started up the website, when they kind of talked about it. I'm currently subscribed to it, which I'm probably going to... Sorry, DC. I'm probably going to drop it and come back to it later because there's just not a lot to keep me going. Well, that's beside the point. Disney Plus has broken me. I gotta do it. This is my Tiananmen Square. I have to stand up to this. Why do we need all these streaming services? We have to stop. As a society, we have to say, this is it. This is the line in the sand. No more. Not every property, or not every company, I should say, deserves to have a streaming service. I understand we live in a capitalistic society where I'm from in America. And you can do whatever you want with your business that you please. But we've got to stop it. Because what was the whole point of streaming? When Netflix became the Netflix that we know it now, it was to cut the cord with cable. Because we were sick of paying these crazy monthly fees and getting all these channels, but not all of them really, do we really need 400 channels? No, we don't. Society, we don't. But there's just something that irks me about what Disney did here. And it's not Disney's fault. They're a business. They have a ton of properties, including Star Wars and Marvel, so that only makes sense for them as a company to do something like this. When you have all these properties, why not charge people to pay for it? Because people love it. I mean, just the Pixar movies and the animated movies from the 90s alone will get people to buy this. So I totally get it from a business standpoint. As a consumer, I hate it. And I'm always going to hate it. I don't, somebody could maybe let me know in the comments or, message Loud and Opinionated on Facebook or Twitter and maybe try and convince me otherwise. But good luck, because I'm very angry. So, with the announcement of Disney Plus, they've also announced that they are going forward with the Loki series. I talked about this on my personal YouTube channel. They had floated the idea of doing a Loki series, which I hate because to me, Loki's story was wrapped up in where it needed to be in Infinity War, and the only spoilers for Infinity War, the only direction you could go is backwards. And just minus Red Dead Redemption 2, in general, I hate prequels. Because I know where the story ends. So, and the fact that they're making a series, probably a miniseries, but the fact they're making a series of this, to me, is idiotic. I get it. Tom Hiddleston crushed it as Loki, and people loved Loki. But what else can you tell me that's going to entice me? Because we know that he's a frost giant. We know that he's going to keep tricking Thor. We know what happens in Infinity War. And again, if you haven't seen that movie by now, what are you doing with your life? So what is why? Why? And I think this is one of the reasons why Disney broke me. Because I understand if you're going to charge monthly, you have to hook people to give you that $10 a month. You got to have a stream of content to get them, because yes, they'll come there for the stuff that you have with Pixar and the like what I mentioned earlier, the animated movies from the 90s, or they have a ton of properties that they could rest on their laurels with. But to get most people to spend that $10 a month, they've got to have a stream of new original content. But what is the purpose of a Loki series other than to make the money? That's the thing that gets me the most. Is like there's nowhere to go with him. And then we also find out that Jon Favreau's The Mandalorian's going to be on there. I love Star Wars. I actually liked Solo. Not a lot of people did. Not a lot of people liked The Last Jedi, and I liked The Last Jedi. But to me, there's a message here that not a lot of people like. There's the Disney Star Wars. And now we're giving it to Jon Favreau, who did an amazing job with Iron Man and Iron Man. Iron Man 2 is okay, not a bad movie, I don't think. And you give him a series called The Mandalorian, and so now people are like, is it going to be about Boba Fett? Is he going to play a role in it? That's cool, and I like that idea, and I can understand why that's going to be on the streaming service, but you guys just put Star Wars on hold despite the main saga, despite Episode 9. You kind of just put all the spin-off movies on hold, but now you're going to double down on this series? What are we doing here? I think the big reason Disney Plus ruined me is because I might end up using it because I just want to see the Mandalorian series. You guys are just so greedy. And again, I've mentioned it. It makes so much sense business-wise. You're just printing money. And the fact that what they're doing, I guess the purpose of the Loki series is to say, hey, look, we're going to do a little bit of Marvel miniseries. We have the little Star Wars. So maybe if it's successful, we'll keep doing other Marvel miniseries. And unlike their Star Wars, people still really, really love the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So they'll still get into it. And the reason I defended DC Universe, because DC Universe made a sort of a hybrid of a streaming service and a comic shop. I think that's the big reason why I was into it, because I think I get better with their library, but you could read the comics there, and they had encyclopedias and things like that. So if you're not familiar with a certain DC character, it was there on the database, but they had a comic book shop essentially, so I can read comics. That, to me, if they really beefed that up and made that better, that would be worth the $8 a month that you pay for DC Universe. But you don't see that with Disney Plus. Disney Plus is strictly a streaming service. It's just another thing to pay for. Well, let's look at it this way. How many streaming services do I have personally? I have Netflix. I have Hulu. Well, Netflix is probably the only one I pay for. So my argument isn't valid. But anyway, for me, as a consumer, Netflix, DC Universe, Hulu, almost said Halo. Hulu, HBO. That's 4. HBO, I think, is, I want to say $15 a month. I could be wrong. Netflix is 10. Pretty sure. Again, I might be off on these numbers, but for sake of argument, say it's 15 for HBO, 10 for Netflix and Hulu. DC Universe is 8. That's a lot of money right there. And say I was super into the UFC or WWE. I get WWE Network, that's $10 a month. The Fight app, which is $10 a month. My point is, why? Why do we keep stacking these streaming services? Because in the first place, to get rid of streaming services was to cut the cord and get rid of cable, because you didn't want to keep paying the prices that you were for DirecTV or Dish or whatever. But now we keep adding streaming services, so we keep paying for it. I mean, you say you really want to watch King of the Hill just came back to Hulu, and you just miss King of the Hill, and you want to watch that, so you have to pay the $10 there for Hulu. And well, Netflix has been killing it with the original series. I really like Daredevil. I really like the new Sabrina show. I gotta watch that, so that's $10 a month. Then HBO, good God, pretty much anything HBO makes, original series wise, is top notch. So I gotta watch those, which is $15 a month. And then you bring along Disney, who's like, oh, we're going to make Marvel shows. We're going to make Star Wars shows. So that's another $10 a month. DC is like, oh, man, we're really trying hard. We're going to nail it down. We got a Swamp Thing show. We got a Teen Titans show, which I need to watch more of. I've only watched one episode. But we got these things and Doom Patrol and all these other things coming down the pike. We're going to put our animated movies, which are phenomenal. We're going to put those on here. Oh, and we're going to have comics. That's $8 a month. By the end of the day, you're going to have 10 streaming services, and you're going to be paying $100 to $150 a month. Well, not really. $120 probably. But you're going to be paying that a month. Why can't we all just get along? Why do all these companies have to be greedy? And the worst part is, it makes sense financially for them, because you have all these, especially Disney. Disney owns everything. So they have all these amazing franchises that people are going to pay money for. All the stuff that I mentioned with Marvel and Star Wars and Pixar, that's the thing. They have a kid angle. They have so much entertainment that's family friendly that could work, and that's kind of what their driving force is they're going to be like the big family friendly service. And kids now, you gotta put a tablet in front of their face. I'm not saying parents to do that are bad parents. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you almost have to as this point in our society. That's just the way that kids are viewing entertainment now. That's okay. I want to make that clear because I have friends that have kids, and I'm not saying they're bad parents because they put a tablet in front of their face. That's not what I'm saying. Cover my ass here. And yes, somebody's going to pay for it, and you're going to borrow their login because that's just how we work. I get it. I do it. My friends do it. Everybody does it. But I'm just saying, if you're someone, as a consumer, maybe not me, but a consumer, this is what frustrates me, is I'm always someone that's going to be on the side of the consumer because I don't own these kind of things. So it's just so much money for entertainment. And you argue that the argument is obviously the same argument for anything. It's, you don't have to pay for these things. It's optional. It's just entertainment. I 100% agree with you. But I'm someone that has to know these things and cares about these things. Like, when I saw the trailer for Daredevil, if I didn't already have Netflix, I was going to buy it. They sold me on it. You know what I'm saying? And it's water cooler talk, man. There's so many shows out there that you want to talk about and share these experiences with other people. It's the social aspect. So when you say you don't have to get it, you don't. But if you have friends and you don't, they're probably going to be annoyed if you keep showing up or taking their login. They're going to want to know about these things, and you're going to have to spend the money. It's just the simplest fact as that. In a perfect world for me, there would be like 3 services. There would be like Hulu, Netflix, and HBO, and that's it. And everybody would get along, and Netflix would pay whatever money they wanted to for Disney to still have Marvel shows. Or, the same thing with Hulu. Because what happens with Runaways for Hulu? What happens with Cloak and Dagger that was on TNT? All these things go back to Disney. And you can't tell me they're not. They took Luke Cage. They took Iron Fist. I don't really care. They suck. But they definitely took their toys. And we're like, we're gonna play with these now. It's such a first world problem episode to be complaining about streaming services like I am, but I think we've hit critical mass. DC Universe was already putting me on the brink, and now Disney just put me over the edge. We're spending too much money on these streaming services. And I think the thing that bothers me the most is why do we have all these streaming services and we still don't have a dedicated, I'm sure there probably is one out there, but it probably sucks, a dedicated sports streaming service. Where is it? Oh, there's also YouTube TV and YouTube Red. So YouTube got in on the action. You know how I know about these things? Because whenever I'm on YouTube, and I frequently am, I get bombarded with it. When I skip ads, it's like, well, you could get it ad free with YouTube Red. Pay $10 a month just to not have an annoying 15-second ad. You know what? I will take the 15 seconds because I'm cheap. This is going to be really hard if we ever launch a Patreon for Loud and Opinionated for anybody to pay for it, because as much as I'm railing against streaming services. But we'll deal with that when we come to it. This is, the most annoying thing. I'll probably buy Disney Plus because I want to see the Mandalorian series. And I mentioned that earlier. I want to keep reiterating that. This sucks because they're all making such good content. And we can't just have one platform. That's always been the issue. And competition will always make the market better. I totally get that. But it's the same thing where it's like, man, PlayStation is killing it with their exclusives. But there's a lot of cool things, and all my friends play on Xbox, and I wish we could all be on one console, but I know it's not going to happen. That's just the nature of the beast. We have to have competition. You have to have a driving force. I get that. That's the point. It's a free market. I don't know. Am I crazy? Am I the only one that is this upset about the amount of streaming services we're having? Am I just an old man yelling at a cloud? Let me know in the comments below on the YouTube video. Leave it. Like I said, leave a comment on the Facebook or Twitter. Maybe I'm crazy, but I feel like we just have too much. I think that's the situation we're in. Thank you so much for listening to this just insane episode of Loud and Opinionated. I am your host, Jake Williams. You can get the show on so many platforms. You can get it on iTunes. You can get it on Spotify. We just got on Spotify. I'm very happy about that. Oh, yeah, don't even get me started on music streaming services. No, but I'm very happy that Spotify has kind of changed their stance and really opened it up for more podcasts and content creators. That's good for a small show like this one to be on a big platform like Spotify. So yes, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio. I believe by the time this goes live, we'll be on Stitcher. Pretty much anywhere you can get a podcast service, or anywhere you listen to your podcast, we are there. And I'm very happy with this show. I'm gonna keep trying to put them up twice a week, 2-topic format where I just rail against something or I praise something. Or we remember a legend like we did Stan Lee in this episode. You want to follow us on social media? Go ahead and do that. We at Loud Opinionated on Twitter. It's also Loud and Opinionated on Facebook. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, if you want to contribute to our website, write some articles, share your opinions. We don't silence opinions unless they're very, very racist or bigoted. We don't believe in that nonsense. Be loud at loudandopinionated.com. That's the email where you send in your article, and we will put it up for you on the website, credit you, and share it on social media and applaud you. So have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much for listening.